had this little weed empire that I had been working on since I was 17 years old. So let's tell the story about, I had this little weed empire that I had been working on since I was 17 years old. And my whole philosophy in dealing weed was this: deliver, and then there's an asterisk next to the deliver. Maintain a consistent profit margin and quality, and just be honest. Just treat it like a normal business, right? That was my thing. And it was a brutal time, expensive prices, you know, paying $300 for an ounce and buying them 2 pounds at a time. I mean, the amount of investment there, that's $4,800 a pound. That's like $10,000 to invest to end up making only $3,200. That's like maximum profit possible. That's like giving nobody any deals at all. Like, that's a 2.8 for $40 straight up. So the profit margin was shit, you know, 30%-ish. And you got gas and time, and yeah, I mean, it wasn't super lucrative. But the benefit came in when I was growing the weed and I was harvesting my own weed, and then I could inject my weed right in there and pull the maximum profit out. That's what made it worth it. So I had this formula that I had concocted from years of observation. And my years of observation were about how this other crew ran their weed distribution setup. So these guys literally had an apartment with weed and a scale, and they would only sell it by the gram, however many grams you wanted, whatever the price was per gram. They would move. They had several different apartments throughout the city. So I don't remember what the process was because there was no cell phones. Pager, maybe you paid somebody, I think, or maybe they had landlines. Anyway, it was all run by this one dude, pretty much, that I met like kind of a couple times. I was just like there when he was dropping shit off or whatever. Anyway, I basically just ran down the operation. You know, they were selling per grams, and they would move. They had just a bunch of, you know, low income style, but they weren't really low income. They weren't like some kind of special, you know, they were just cheap apartments, right? So that was how I had patterned my own concept on this through. So it became a situation where I was basically kind of the fucking running the show, and Scott was in charge of the actual selling. He was the insulation between me and Dan. And so Dan had a grow house, I had a grow house. We were buying weed through connections, different people, and then just putting it into our operation. We were like really blowing up. Stoggs was a fucking retard, basically. I mean, the way he thought about shit, the way he arranged shit was always just so fucking ridiculous. Like, where he would come up with his ideas, I have no idea, but they were just always shit. And, you know, everybody fucking always was like, why don't you dump that dude? Why don't you dump that dude? You know, I mean, literally from the second I started hanging out with him, his mother fucking telling my mother, don't let your son hang out with this dude. All the way through, like, all this fucking shit, all these other people. Like, I met Dan and Johanna through Scott, he met Dan at a landscape job, right? And then we became really good friends, and they're like, we don't like Scott, he's a scumbag, blah, 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 why don't you ditch him? And it was just like, man, he's my friend. Yeah. And that's been one of my biggest failures in life, is holding on to some friends too long. And then on the inverse, not holding on to other friends long enough. So, anyway, so Scott put this guy in one apartment. And, I don't remember my entire philosophy and criteria, but it was well thought out. And it basically was like, we need 7 different apartments or something, or, and employee and separation and da-da-da-da-da. Well, Scott got somebody to get an apartment or something, and that fucking guy got busted in like less than a week. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like literally less than a week. Because they didn't follow my directions. So now fucking, shit's fucked. And really never recovered from that. That bust, and the money that fucking got lost, and then the people up the chain got spooked, and so that connection disappeared. And then Dan and Joanna got spooked and took off. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much that story. So then Johanna had a brother, or has a brother, and this guy was as square as you fucking got. So basically you had this situation where you had this totally square family. I mean, like, the mother was suspected of having an affair with this construction guy. That was about as fucking radical as their family got. The daughter, the Johanna, hooks up with this guy from Coos Bay who had this just crazy childhood with a hippie mom. And this dude, Dan, was just looking for fucking stability. I mean, he just grew up being drug all over, and just, and then Johanna was a big family, had a, whole super fucking tight family with her brother and her mom and her dad. And Jim, was it? I don't know, somebody's name is Jim. This guy ended up, Johanna's brother, I don't remember his name, ended up dating the girl that I met on the boat years prior, and I don't remember her name either. She was this half Asian, she was super pretty. She was my friend for years, telephone call friend, we'd hang out infrequently. But then we started, then I hooked up with her friend, and she hooked up with my friend, which was this guy. That whole thing, I mean, it all got fucked off by me having 2 girlfriends. Like, that could have been one of those situations where, you spend the rest of your life with the same group of friends and blah, 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 blah. But basically, like, my girlfriend, Rachel, anorexic girl, it's so much easier to use names. Oh, I'm so glad the lawyers told me I was fine. Holy shit. She was super pissed when she found out, and then there was something else that happened, like, I told dude something about her or something, I don't know. It just turned into a giant shit show. And then I ended up staying with Julie, and so that turned out to be like a whole, thing. And then, so I don't even think that dude ever hooked up a girl before I hooked him up with that other girl. And then Julie hooked him up with this other fucking friend of hers. And if I'm remembering right, she was the one that was married to the guy, and that guy loaned Julie the money for her boob job. And then Julie hooked his wife up with my friend. So now this is where things got fucked up. We're talking about drug wars, we're talking about people doing long times in prison. We're talking about people losing everything they've ever worked for. Just thievery by the government. So, all in the name of building a police state. You know, tensions are fucking high. And it's, you know, there's like, it's just dangerous and shit, you know? I am an honest person, being honest, but there's super fucking sketchy people, fucking thieving pieces of shit. One day, Jim and Johanna, yeah, I think that was it, Jim and Johanna. So the brother's name was Jim. This guy was, I mean, he was just like a simple, nice guy that just was a fucking retard on certain levels, like keeping his fucking mouth shut. And then, okay, so this incident was, so he is now hooked up with this other chick. And then they are, I think my girlfriend was there, and so Julie and her friend and him and then some other people, and they're all over someplace. I'm not there. I can't even remember what the situation was that they were all dealing with or whatever. So, or what they weren't dealing with the situation, they were just hanging out for some reason. So anyway, when they were all hanging out, there was people they were hanging out with. They didn't need to know a fucking thing about anything, and this fucker ran down everything to him. I mean, he just short of giving him the fucking addresses and shit, right? He does this, and then so then Julie tells me, so I confront him, and his reaction was to basically call Julie a liar. And at that point, I just had to fucking, deal out a little counterculture justice. So you open your mouth, you run your mouth about some shit that you shouldn't be running it to people you shouldn't be running it to, and then you lie and call somebody else a fucking liar. When I got more than one person corroborating the fucking story, that's why you got socked up, dude. Okay? You fucking act right, you don't get socked up. Then when you fuck up, you don't lie to try to get out of your fuck up. So I would say 90% of that fucking ass whooping came from the lie and not coming from the fucking stupidity, Like, forget, like, dude, that was it. So the guy got a couple lumps on his head, maybe a little bloody nose or something, but it's literally like the first time anybody had ever put fucking hands on the dude. And, unfortunately in capitalism, and when you're on the other side of a war being waged against a certain segment of the population, justice is sometimes measured out in fists. I'm not like proud of that shit, but unfortunately it's shit that has to happen. And I want to create a society where that shit's pointless. And we can. It's called a resource-based economy. And you can check it out up here. So this guy goes on, and the death threats and the, bullshit start. I'm gonna call the cops and all this shit. So that was really like the nail in the coffin of that whole friendship and just that whole entire thing, the way it was set up. That was it. Like, that was Johanna's brother and Dan's brother-in-law, and blood is thicker than water. It was just like, we had the whole bus thing, and then that, so that was just pretty much it. I actually did see Dan and Johanna years later. I think they actually came over to my house for a second when I had this house downtown. Vaguely remember that. Yeah, they were really good people. I mean, Jim was a good guy. He was just, he was just a fucking retard that wasn't. Some people might say criminal thinking. What I prefer to call it is self-preservational thinking. Okay? Like, I'm not trying to fucking go to prison. I'm not trying to fucking get killed. So I do certain things to avoid those things. Prevention. Ounce of prevention, pound of cure.